remind your team about, hey, you can go and talk to somebody. You don't want to be so cold and callous as to say, hey, I watched a man get brutally murdered today, but you're going to have that report by 3 o'clock, right?
Hello and welcome. I'm Yasmin Murray with Cedri International, along with
Granison Shines with Cedri International as well.
At Cedri International, we transform our clients to be alluring and magnetic. We also teach 43 different leadership skills that we deem necessary in order for you as an executive or an entrepreneur to be successful. In continuation with our leadership interview series, today we have an amazing guest. He is everybody doesn't know him yet, but his team, he is a champion. And today, after this segment, not only are you going to know him a little better, but also remember him. Today we have Jeff Hayden. Hello, Jeff. Say hello to everyone.
Hello, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here. I have been following you guys before I was officially following you. I guess that means I was stalking you. But I really appreciate what you guys do. You always encourage people and try and train them and make them better. And that's really something that I'm passionate about as well. And I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Just a little bit about Jeff. He started working for Turner Broadcasting right after college, some 30 years ago. Started out working for the shipping and receiving department, delivering packages, and slowly worked his way up from the loading docks to the tower at CNN, to the tower of CNN Center, managing a department. He is currently managing at CNN International Sales Operations Department, carrying the responsibility of managing the advertising campaigns airing on the international and Spanish networks of CNN. Jeff, before we get into the meat of the conversation, I know you're a family man. You have a lot of hobbies from what I hear. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm the proud dad of two amazing kids. I have a 13-year-old girl and a 16-year-old boy who are really into softball and football. And we live in Roswell, Georgia, a suburb north of Atlanta. And right now, my son's football team is undefeated. Go Hornets.
Nice.
Yay!
Nice.
So that is going well. So some other hobbies I have are that I enjoy running, but I've also been a DJ, a mobile DJ, for over 25 years.
Wow.
So I've done hundreds of weddings and parties and corporate events and stuff like that. So it's possible I could bust into some kind of song at some point as we're talking today. It's entirely possible. But I just really enjoy giving people a really good day, whether it's a wedding reception or whatever. And that's something that's kind of been my side hustle for a really long time as well, about as long as I've worked at Turner Broadcasting. So the last thing, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that I just got remarried to the wonderful Jill. So just this year, during a crazy COVID year, we just us and the pastor, and we managed to start our life together and blend our families. And thank you, God. It's actually been going very well. So it's been a crazy, busy year, but
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Good things along the way too. So thanks.
That's why you're glowing.
Right, newlywed. There you go.
Well, congratulations. That's awesome. All right. So I know the first question. Granison has the first question for you. Are you ready?
Let's do it. Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely. So in this current COVID era, we know that it is affecting a lot of different industries. It's affecting a lot of different people, personally and professionally, put it that way. So how has this COVID-stricken area affected the industry that you're in? And what are some of the challenges that you face as a leader during this climate?
There's been many in the international ad sales world, especially in CNN, which I manage. We do a lot of advertising with our primary sectors like tourism, travel, airlines, and that's a lot of our revenue that comes in, and the entire world went into hiding. So needless to say, revenue plummeted some and when COVID hit and everybody went into quarantine. And that's been a huge struggle to try and get some of that back. And we're finally slowly starting to get back on track. Fourth quarter is our busiest time of year, so we're really hoping to have a big Q4. So that was a huge thing. And what was a big challenge for me and our team was trying to get our heads around the fact that expectations about what has to be done in your operation every day still had to get done every day,
Sure.
while where you and your team were doing it is completely different.
Right.
Now they've got challenges where your staff is working from home, and you have to realize that they may suddenly have to be a kindergarten teacher, fifth grade teacher, and an operational specialist. And what are those challenges that your team is dealing with at home? Give them a little grace, maybe extend some deadlines, be aware of their challenges at their house. Not so challenges where you're invading their personal space. So there's that balance there, right, between those two things. So that was certainly some of the things that are going on. And, you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't say one cool about what's going on in our country with regards to everything with all the people who have been killed, Black Lives Matter, the death of people like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, et cetera.
Sure.
To just go, and it's been very challenging, whether it was what's going on with COVID or that, is I just wanted to reach out and just say, how are you? I know there's a lot going on. And just to have a sympathetic ear and just listen and say, how are you doing? And that was a really impactful, and I'm so glad I did. There's not much I can do about it, but just to give them an opportunity to just say what's on their mind. And if you work for an organization that has some benefits where you can professionally talk to somebody, remind your team about, hey, you can go and talk to somebody. You don't want to be so cold and callous as to say, hey, I watched a man get brutally murdered today, but you're going to have that report by 3 o'clock, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't that sound cold, callous, out of touch? You don't want to be that kind of manager. I don't think you want to be that person. So whether it's that or whether it's COVID, listen to your team. Give them a chance to tell them how they're feeling and how it's going. And I think that's going to go a long, long way. And if you as their manager needs to jump in and handle a report or two while they're going to talk to somebody if they're really having a hard time, then maybe that's what you should do. Because as a manager with your team, at least my experience, it's a long, long road. Mm-hmm. And you want to try and make that as smooth as possible. And for you to jump in and try and help out and give them an ear to tell you how they're feeling, those are some things that you can do during COVID or any crazy time that's going on in our world.
Having empathy and emotional intelligence right now, it's the key to motivating your team and even yourself. Yeah. You know, in this climate, this day and age, so much going on, you have to stay motivated so you can motivate your team. So definitely. So my next question to you is, how do you set the tone for your team?
That's a great question. I think the first thing you need to realize as a leader is that you watching this video, you set the tone.
Absolutely.
It's not like coming from some magical, mystical place. It's you. So management has and always will set the tone. And I think that if you're not sure what your tone is, you just answer the question, what's it like to work here? Answer that question. What's it like to work here? Well, we protect the integrity of the bottom line. No, not what you do. What's it like to work here? That's what you have to answer that question. And my experience, I think what works really well is a blend of professionalism and fun. Professionalism as, hey, we're really good at what we do. We've got the respect of our clients and partners that we work with in service, but we also try and have a good time doing it. I think that most people perform at a higher level if they're relaxed and maybe even have a little bit of fun. Sometimes you're spending more time with the people you work with than your own family. If you got a joke, tell it. I like to laugh, don't you? It's okay to laugh and to have a little bit of fun. So I think that blend of professionalism and fun is a great tone to set for your team, and it starts with you. So I think that's kind of how you do that.
Absolutely. Seems, you know, just by talking to you, it really seems like you're very compassionate about what you believe and how you are as a leader. And we really appreciate that, because I know recently we were just talking about leadership, some of the leadership skills, one of the greatest leadership skills is listening to your team. And if you're not a good listener, then you're a dictator, you know, telling them what to do all the time, and that's not how teams are motivated. So thank you for that answer.
Well, absolutely. And just a reminder that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. Sometimes we need to listen twice as much as we talk.
Sure, absolutely. Well said there.
Yes.
And so in creating the tone for your team, part of that comes with it is actually meeting with the team members, right? Whether it's individually,
Right.
whether it's collectively. Why is it important to meet with your team after you really set that tone?
Yeah, this was one I really had to learn, because when you get promoted or thrown into a management position, or however you came to be in a position of leadership, you're so worried about getting done everything that has to get done every day. And I understand that you're busy and you've got 100+ emails every single day, and you've got things that have to get done, and you might be in crisis mode, and you might be having to go through disciplining somebody on your team, and you got projects due. You've got to meet with your team. And here's why. When you get promoted from peer to manager, you're not in the know. You are no longer in the know. And that's what I found. Imagine this. You've got cubicles, and now you're in an office. You are literally and physically separated from the group. You don't know the inside jokes. You're not part of that immediate group that's out there, you know, quote unquote, in the trenches. And you're not in the know. You're also not going to be in the know between the tension that's going on between John and Sally. If you're meeting with your team, you're going to see it. You're going to see the body language and the way they talk to each other, the communication back and forth. You've got to meet with your team to keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on with your team. What's the camaraderie like? Is the camaraderie level good? Is it bad? If you're not meeting with your team, you're not going to know those things. Sure, you need to meet with your team to talk about operational stuff, but when the air is clear and when something comes up, you can see it better. You can know that it's going on.
Sure.
Meeting with your team. So you got to meet with your team. So I know you're busy. So the little trick is to just simply put it on the calendar as reoccurring and have it every week, bi-weekly, whatever it is. So you continue to meet with your teams. You can keep your finger on the pulse of what on earth is going on with your team. Otherwise, you'll get more and more disconnected, and that's just not a good thing.
Right. How has that changed for you by utilizing, now that we have disparate offices, one department working from home, disparate office now, we're all separated. How has that changed for you during this time and using technology through this COVID?
Right. Well, it's hard because you're not seeing them personally, physically. I haven't seen my team in 8 months. Physically seen them, right? So that's tough. But there's also less opportunity for people to get on each other's nerves. Somebody who's making fish for lunch in the office every day, you're not smelling that because they're at their house and you're at yours. You don't have to worry about that, right? So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But you also need to just do what you can. And I think that you're able to meet more often with people who are far away. We're international. And it's actually crazy because I talk with and meet with and work with people who are far, far away from me more often now than I did pre-COVID, because I think everybody knew that video conferencing existed, and now we know all about it.
Oh, yeah.
And that really has been kind of the difference these days.
But don't you feel like now working with Zoom, you of course have international teams as well, that has brought the teams even closer? If you're doing Zoom, now you have your international and your national teams together on Zoom.
Yeah, to some extent it really has. And I'm in management, which means I'm salaried, which means my work hours are whatever, as opposed to some people on my team are hourly. So you don't really want to have them meeting with the Hong Kong team, which is a 12-hour time difference. But I will from time to time. And I used to have a long commute going to the CNN Center in downtown Atlanta, and I live in a suburb north of Atlanta. So you kind of take that time and use it for other things that are more beneficial, as opposed to wasted time commuting. Now you can use that time to talk to people around the world.
Right.
Yes. So earlier you talked about your team and conflict resolution. I know that's really important. So how do you deal with the conflict resolution?
I'm so glad I'm here today because I've made a lot of mistakes. And if I can help just one person help avoid some of the mistakes I've made, all of this, the whole meeting is certainly well worth it. Conflict resolution, conflict will happen. It's inevitable. No matter how good you are, it's just going to come up because we're all human. And here's the bottom line that I would say. Get both sides of the story. That is huge. You got to get both sides of the story. Here's the scenario. Let's say your primary client, a really big client, let's say it's sales. They're aware of a mistake. Sales has gotten a call from their multi-million-dollar client who is now upset because they have seen something go wrong out on television in my world or something like that. Salesperson immediately calls me and is yelling at me because he's upset. You have disrupted the relationship. You have impacted revenue, and he's rightfully upset. And he may be really upset. He could be reading me the riot act. And as a manager, when someone is yelling at you, you know exactly in your mind who was supposed to avoid this whole thing from happening. You know who that is. Don't tell that person, oh, John messed up or whoever, right? You need to protect your team. You don't know the whole story yet. You need to get both sides of the story. It's very important. Just tell the person who's upset, thank you for bringing this to my attention. We're going to look into it and let me get back to you. There's nothing wrong with saying that.
Right.
When you bring that person into your office and talk to them, what you need to do is just say, hey, this has been brought to my attention. From your perspective, tell me what happened. Again, this is one of those times where you just listen. Shut up and listen and let them talk. It is very tempting, I know because I've done it, to yell at your team member the same way that somebody yelled at you. Don't do that. You don't know both sides of the story yet. And I've made this mistake. I implore you, just let them talk. Because this person that you're talking to could be one of your star performers.
Sure. Right.
You're going to accuse them and jump down their throat without even getting their side of the story. And I don't care how, there could be no other possible explanation except they messed up. They didn't follow the policies and procedures you put into place, and now our client's upset. Get both sides of the story first. Let them talk. And I'm telling you, I have been amazed at how many times I've been told about a scenario that I had no idea was even possible. It exonerates them and your team. It wasn't even your fault. And whew, thank goodness I didn't just yell at one of my top performers and accuse them of making all these mistakes when it wasn't their fault in the first place.
Right.
One of your jobs as a manager is to hire and retain top talent. And if you're going to yell at them and fly off the handle without getting both sides of the story and hearing it from their perspective first, they're going to be out the door before you know it. And next thing you know, you're like, well, why are people leaving? Maybe you should get both sides of the story first when you're dealing with conflict resolution.
Right, right. And then in resolving conflict, whether it's in any leadership capacity, whether it's your family dynamic, that ecosystem, or whether it's the ecosystem at work, you're always, as a leader, you're always going to be the one that's going to be that mediator, or at least you should be the one being the mediator in order to resolve the conflict. And when you are doing that and resolving conflict or helping people resolve conflict, there comes a level of respect that they have for you in order to help, in order for you to really be that manager or the person who's going to be the mediator. So in saying that, how do you get your staff to respect you?
My goodness, I may not know you, but I know this about you, that you would like the respect of your team and you would like the respect of your children.
Yes.
Whether they're little kids or your adult children, you want their respect. I think that's a universal thing amongst all of them. And there's some things as a leader that you can do to try and get your team to respect you. And I think one of the first things you can do is to make sure you know how to do everything that your team is doing. So you're the manager over maybe 3 different little main areas. Could be inventory, log management, commercials, commercial library, whatever. And make sure you know how to do what they do.
Right.
They're the subject matter experts. They're the one doing it every day. But when you learn how to do what they do, It does two things. It says what you're doing is not beneath you, and that what they do matters. And you, in times of crisis or in whenever you feel it's necessary, you can roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty to help get through a tough time. That's going to go a long way.
Well said, because that's an issue that a lot of organizations have, is having some redundancy, even at the department level. The redundancy is important. So someone leaves, quits, or whatever, then you have to step in there as a manager. You may have to do that. They're sick all of a sudden, boom, you have to step in as a manager. Cross team members knowing that aspect as well if you're out of the office. So yes, I totally agree with that. Well said on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just want to hammer that point home, Granison. That's a great point. Is when there's turnover and somebody leaves a department, my personal belief is that the manager should do the job of that person who just left.
Sure.
And when new people come in, you should train all new employees.
Sure.
You should train all new employees. And you should do the job of the person who just left your department. And so you can hire and train that person, and then you hand it off to them, because now they're hired and trained. And don't put that burden directly on the staff. That's a really big thing.
Yeah.
But in just listening to what you said, you started with a company 30 years ago. You know every step of the way what steps to take. What if someone was hired from the outside in a position and now their subordinate has left and they have no idea how to train this person?
Right. I mean, you're going to have to lean on your team at that point. You just are. Yeah. But maybe that person who is still there that does know how to do that job, maybe the two of you get trained at the same time. That's okay. Mm-hmm. They know that you've been hired from the outside because you have managerial experience or leadership experience and that person doesn't. I mean, let's be honest, it's a big change. It's a big mind shift when you say, I'm only responsible for my own work, to I'm responsible for the work of my entire team.
Sure.
When my team makes a mistake, it shows up on my review at the end of the year, just like it shows up on theirs. And guess what? I get all the credit too. When they do the work and things went well and I didn't have to do it, I get the credit as well. So it's a two-way street. So yeah, I would just say have that person train you, the manager, and the new person at the same time. I think they'll understand. It sends the same good message that what they're doing matters and it's not beneath you to do it. And then once you're trained on it, jump in from time to time, get your hands dirty and help out the team when they need it.
Absolutely, absolutely. By listening to you, I can feel that you're emphatic about communication. Now, this day and age where we have 5 generations in the workforce, how do you deal with the multi-generation, especially in communication?
Right.
How is that affecting your line of work, and how do you communicate with the millennials or the
baby boomers?
The baby boomers.
You have some baby boomers on your team, the Gen
X,
Z,
Gen Y,
Gen
Z.
I mean, you have all these different generations there.
Right. No baby boomers on my team, but I'm a Gen Xer, and certainly millennials and Gen Z or digital native or whatever they call them.
Right.
I think it's really important for you to try and know what's going on in the world of each of your team members. What challenges are they facing? What are their, maybe without getting too involved in their personal life, being aware of what those are. Like I said at the beginning, knowing what their challenges are and knowing what they're dealing with, whether it's school-age kids at home during quarantine or whatever, or the other opposite of the spectrum, just sheer isolation from someone who's single and being at home. Being aware of what's going on and having a sympathetic ear and knowing that their challenges are going on. And one more thing is be aware of what's on each person's plate too. It goes a long way. If you ask somebody to perform a project outside of their normal work, meanwhile they're already covering for somebody, they're already slammed. And now you're asking them to put a project on top of that, they're going to look at you like you got 2 heads.
Yeah.
Don't you have any clue? Are you clueless? Do you not know what I'm already dealing with? So if you do need to have that person, when you're talking to them and communicating with them, You talk to each person differently. You motivate each person a little bit differently as you get to know their personality, their challenges at home, communicating with them in a way that may be more relatable. Some people are motivated differently. As a manager, you kind of got to know this person is this way and this person is that way. And if you can know that, obviously more challenging with a huge staff. You know, we've got like 10 people, but some people, I understand, in an operation, they may be over 30, 40 people. Obviously, that's more of a challenge to know each person. But I just try and know a whole lot of music and talk to them about the type of music that they may like. And as a DJ, I try and be aware of even current music. So it's kind of help them relate that way, maybe through music, to find a way to relate for someone that's a different age than you.
As a boss, you talked about team building. I know right now you can't really get together, but when you did, what was some of the team building activities that you did together?
So some were in the office and some were outside of the office. I mean, we would love to get together, and maybe you did an escape the room. If you've ever done an escape the room, that's
Yes.
really cool. Maybe it's a happy hour. We try and have the team once a month for birthdays to celebrate whoever had a birthday in the month of October or June or whatever, and try and get together once a month. And you know whether it's just cake or cocktails or whatever your organization is into, right? And try and schedule and put on the calendar some stuff where you're going to do something that kind of bonds the team together, and you just kind of hang out and relax, and you shoot the breeze and talk about football or kids, or have music playing in the background, make it a little festive. I mean, it's things like that I think are really important to try and do as often as possible. But obviously work comes first, but try and do things like that. There's little team building activities that you can go online. There's all kinds of little things you can try and figure out, puzzles together or something like that. I know it sounds silly and they may roll your eyes, but I do think that they actually play a role and they should be done.
Well, being in Atlanta, I'm sure you've taken them to Falcons games and the Braves games.
Well, used to, but there's been so many budget cuts over the years that don't quite have the budget for that. But whatever the budget allows in your world, definitely do it. Don't let that don't let budget money go unused. Find a way to use it for your team. If your boss's boss allow you so much to do something for your team, don't just say, oh, we didn't use it. Well, guess what? If you don't use it every year, they're going to give it to somebody else, and you're not going to have it again next year. So do whatever you can with whatever you got.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. So I have another question for you. I'm one of, say, for instance, I'm one of your employees and I would like some time off, but it's a busy time of the year.
Right.
How do you handle the PTO of your employees?
Let me ask you something. Does your PTO and time off mean something to you? Mm-hmm. Is it important to you? Mm-hmm. It's important to your staff too.
Yeah.
It's important to your staff too. I think that you need to say yes 95+% of the time. You need to say yes. If it's a really busy time, then set the expectation at the beginning of the year. Let's say, for example, you can only have 25% of, let's say you divide the year into quarters, and one quarter, first quarter, fourth quarter, whatever it is the busiest time of year. Well, then limit everybody, yourself included. You can only take 25% of your time off for the year in that quarter.
Right.
But you need to tell them now in October for next year. Right? So you can't just say at the beginning of the quarter, hey, you can only take 4 days off for the next 3 months. People can be like, what? Are you kidding me? You can't, you got to plan this far in advance. So know your industry well enough to say, this is the busy time. This is the busy time. And then as a whole group, which would apply to you as the leadership as well, you can only take so much time off during the busiest time, which is great because that allows most of your staff to be working most of the time during the busiest time.
Right. Yeah.
And isn't that what you need to get what you have to get done every day? So I would say to do it that way, be as proactive, do it as far in advance as possible, You may say, hey, for the foreseeable future, for the next 5, 10 years, this is going to be, we're limiting the amount of time off during this time off. The other thing I really want to point out, and it's been very helpful for me and my team, especially if you deal with an operation that has every single day, you have deliverables every single day.
Mm-hmm.
When you have deliverables every single day, regardless if somebody's in the office or out of the office, that work has got to get done. I love the analogy of the mail delivery. If your normal mail delivery that brings your mail to your house every day is out sick that day, do you not get mail? No. Somebody else does their route that includes your house, and it's the same thing in your operation. So we do what's called the buddy system, and the buddy system says that one person to one person does that job. So this one person can never be out of the office at the same time as their buddy. So when this person's out, this person does it. This person's out, this person does it, and then when this person's out, this person does their job.
Right.
And it works really well. It works really well. And you should say yes to their time off as often as possible, because it means just as much to them as it does to you.
That's great.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'd love for you to be my boss. Just kidding. Hey, if I were to ask you, give me 3 adjectives that describe you as a leader that your team would say that Jeff is 1, 2, 3. Give me 3 adjectives that describe your leadership style.
I would like to think professional, fair, and fun. Because I think that provides a balance that says I have pride in my work, I do a good job, I think I have a lot of job knowledge, I'm good at what I do. Fair in that I don't treat one person over another. I try and do my very best to stay very fair. And fun to provide that atmosphere, that tone we talked about at the beginning. It comes from me. So if that's not part of me as a manager, then how am I going to set that tone, right?
Right.
So I think that might be the three things that I would say.
Okay. Good.
Over to you.
One last piece of advice for our listeners before we wrap it up.
Well, there's one thing that when I train people, I always tell them accuracy is more important than speed. One more time. Accuracy is more important than speed. You may have to pump out a report or something that you're working on. It's more important to get it right than it is to get it done quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You may have to tell somebody high in the organization that report needs an extra day before they get it. But let me tell you, it's a whole lot better than giving them bad information that comes from you. You have no idea how high that report that you're turning in is then going to go. And it's been my experience, it's usually pretty high, because if there's a report that some senior executive didn't have to create that can help them with their own agenda, they're going to use it, and it came from you. So accuracy is more important than speed. That is a huge one. And the other one is that your job as a manager is to both hire and retain top talent. Take your time to make the right hire, take the extra time to do it. And then how do you retain the top talent? By getting them to respect you, to make them feel like they matter, that they're important, that their voices are heard. You've made their expectations and their goals clear, and they have a vested interest in their own success of how their job is going year to year as you set goals for them. Give your team members an opportunity to say, how do you see the future of your role? What a great way to get buy-in year in and year out about the goals and expectations for the year. Is to say, where do you see the future of your... Now, if they say, well, I want to show up to work on time, okay, that's not a goal, that's an expectation, right? So, get your team to have buy-in to the goals that they want to have set every year. And I think if you make that clear, then it's going to be a great year, and you'll accomplish great things year after year.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. All of that information was superb, fantastic. If you're a leader, folks, and you're watching this video, you need to listen to it again. Go ahead and listen to it again and learn those lessons that Jeff has learned and shared with us, that he has experienced personally over the past years in his management and as a subordinate, and still being a wonderful leader. Jeff, thank you very much for your time. It was awesome interviewing you and talking to you about your prowess in leadership.
Yeah, it was a real
Thank
pleasure
you.
to be with you guys today. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I wish you and everybody out there, wish them well and much success. Onward and upward.
Onward and upward. All right, folks. I'm Granison Shines here with.
Yasmin Murray, and thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.